Sunday morning soundtrack with a very special Muppet music. Yay! It's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to hear the Muppets on a Muppet Music Delight. The Muppet Show premiered September 5th, 1976, and opened with a song. This song, actually. But really, since Jim Henson has been experimenting with puppetry as a teen in Mississippi and Maryland, and then as a college student at the University of Maryland College Park. Go You Runnin' Turtles? Maybe?
Sounds right.
Yeah, sure.
Did you know that Jim Henson was born in Greenville, Mississippi in 1935 to Paul Ransom Henson, which is a very aggressive middle name, an agriculturalist and crop scientist for the U.S. government, and Betty Marcella, a homemaker. He was particularly close to his maternal grandmother, his mom's mom, who taught him to use a sewing machine and do needlework and quilting while they listened to music.
Oh, the sewing machine, a helping hand.
With a degree in home economics. They don't teach home economics much anymore, right? Home economics, like, it's sewing and, like, learning how to bake a pie and being a good homemaker, basically, right?
I joined home ec in high school because a girl that I liked was in the hallway. It was like this thing where you would walk through and sign up for stuff, and I liked it. And then I went in, I was like, oh no, it's all girls. Like, it's just me and all girls.
That's the greatest. And that makes complete sense. But home ec, for those who don't understand it because they don't teach it now, a class that where you learn some basic stuff so that, like, if you were a man, let's say, and your wife was out of town, that you weren't helpless to know how to, like, put something in the oven or do a basic thing or sew a sock or something. But with that sewing and crafting background, Jim Henson sewed and crafted his own fabric and foam puppets with his collaborator and soon-to-be wife, Jane. And one of the pillars of these puppets' performances, with their very basic rudimentary articulable mouths, was to have them lip sync, move along to songs or novelty records, like this one.
Her name is Luna, she's a peach, but don't leave food within her reach, or babies, or nursemaids, or chocolate ice cream sodas.
And in fact, every early or first appearance, all the way throughout what became the entire Muppet Empire, it was always music. In their first appearance on national TV in October of 1955 on Steve Allen's Tonight Show.
There were two young college students, Jim Henson and Jane Neville. They got together with some little puppets, and they formed what people in Washington now know as the Muppets. A little different than a puppet.
They did a comedic lip sync to the tune of I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face, which is off the My Fair Lady soundtrack, I believe.
Damn, 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 damn. I've grown accustomed to her face.
And it was the pillar of how Jim Henson brought life and sensitivity and vitality to these foam fingers with eyes that became some of the most beloved and lasting characters created in the modern era. So, as I said before, it's time to put on makeup. Though you can't see it, it's an audio medium, I promise I am wearing guy liner. It's time to dress up. Yeah, it's time to dress up right. John and I are both wearing tuxedos. Mm-hmm. You look dashing, my friend.
Well,
it's time to get things started on the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, Muppetational, it's a word. This is what we call Muppet music.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
Did you know Jim Henson and his girlfriend and soon-to-be wife, Jane Neville, with classmates and friends at the University of Maryland College Park, made Salmon Friends?
Salmon Friends.
It was a short-form puppet comedy show that ran for 6 years between 1955 and 1961 on WRC-TV in Washington, D.C. The show centered around a bald-headed puppet named Sam, escaping the harshness and difficulties of his everyday life with the help of his friends he created to talk to these abstracted aspects of himself. They included Yorick the Rockhead, Chicken Liver, Mushmelon, Icky Gunk, Harry the Hipster, and a green felt lizard named Kermit. In the beginning, the show mostly centered around characters lip-syncing to popular songs of the time.
Maybe if I just hit the television like this.
All black magic has me in a spell. Oh, black magic that you weave so well. Those icy fingers.
John, buddy,
Yes.
I couldn't be more pleased, delighted to be doing a Muppet music episode with you that we've talked about, I think, since I guess the first time we played a Muppet song on this, or it's like when you confess to somebody that you're really into, like, I don't know, collecting Beanie Babies or something. Like
It's like one of those things. It's like we would play a song and then you would go, there's a lot more.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to like inside baseball for us. Like we don't want to have the same artist week over week over week over week, but we could. There's so many times we're like, oh, dude, I could do a whole thing about this. But and Muppet music is one of those where it's like, it's such a rich history. It's such a big deal.
It really is. Did you know the very first sketch on the very first episode of The Muppet Show was indeed, who knew, this will be a recurrent theme, stop me if I say it too many times, was indeed a song that's pretty well known and kind of simple. Again, that will be a recurring theme. So simple, in fact, that even a child could sing along. A little call and response song from an Italian film composer for a film about Swedish sexuality called Mana Mana. In 1969, on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that same year, a few days earlier on the very first season of Sesame Street, Jim Henson cracked this fundamental, which had always been fundamental to his puppeting process, but a fundamental of what would be the Muppets and his puppets' universality and appeal. You will never go wrong appealing to people's simple sense of like a contagious, joyful, childlike relatability. And if a child and a grown-up alike can and will sing along with this song, then brother, you got something. Nowadays, you know how we go out of our way to just like to congratulate culture that somehow threads this needle of being like for kids, but also appealing to adults. So whether it's like Pixar movies would be the obvious, and like, the modern, new adult animation, but I don't mean adult animation like Fritz the Cat or like whatever, but adult animation like, across into the Spider-Verse and across the Spider-Verse and all of these.
It is very impressive. And I've thought about this. I don't spend hours in my room alone like a crazy person thinking about this. But okay, I spend hours in my room alone thinking about this. But it's always incredibly impressive to do. But I think I don't know if it's like a chicken or the egg, but if it is that much more impressive and that much more popular because families and parents go, I can watch this with my kids. My kids are going to watch something all day, and I would love to enjoy it because when it's
like to not feel like I'm getting actively dumber.
Yes, blue, 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 and you're like, oh god, kill me. But that's why it's always impressive because it brings us together. We all can sing the songs together. We all can have the same jokes, and then there's little things that are jokes for the adults, like little Easter eggs and things like that, and you go like, nice, good one.
So whether it's like things for kids but that appeal to adults, or as I say, the Pixar movies being the obvious, the Disney adult stuff, or what is now also the Disney adult stuff, like children's modern myths that are now the grown-up modern myths like Marvel or Star Wars. Sorry, guy in my neighborhood who's currently growing a Jedi Padawan beard braid, but that's not a legitimate religion or a legitimate hairstyle, my dude. But we usually take note of this stuff for not talking down to kids, right? Not talking down to children or the grown-ups watching alongside them. But Jim Henson made it about uplift and joy and playfulness and reaching for and aspiring to being in touch with your inner child, right? It was baked into Disney. When you wish upon a star, like look up, my dude, like look up toward the stars, like aspire to that uplift.
Mm-hmm.
That's baked into music, often in general. And just like music was baked into everything Jim Henson did. Jim Henson said once, music is an essential part. I almost did the Kermit voice. I should do it in the Kermit voice. Music is an essential part of everything we do. Like puppetry, music speaks to a worldwide audience in a wonderful way that nourishes the soul. Sincerely, Kermit Jordan Peterson the Frog.
Oh, Kermit.
Yeah. Look, there's ways that kids learn, like, by making it play, by making it fun, by making it silly or joyful little song so that it sticks. Senior VP of the Sesame Workshop pointed out the same thing that advertisers have been weaponizing since the dawn of radio and TV ads. It's these little
jingles, these little pieces of content that had messages.
'Cause if I were an Oscar Mayer wiener, everyone would be in love with me.
Snap makes the world go round. Snap, crackle, pop, Rice Krispies.
It's Linky, for fun is the best of the toys. It's Linky, the favorite of girls and boys. Everyone wants
And children were learning these messages. They were singing these songs.
These little things. And not unlike how all the money and research and resources poured into the military trickles out to later benefit regular folks, there was something Jim Henson and his collaborators did to turn that insight of what advertisers knew from radio commercial jingles, from the ways in which you could hook and earworm your way into people's heads and hearts. Jim Henson and his collaborators turned that weaponized insight of music and songs and earworms towards, away from selling pig parts and coiled metal gravity toys to kids so that they could use it to connect and teach and foster good feelings. And there's a quote in the documentary Street Gang. Have you ever seen Street Gang? It's about the making of Sesame Street.
No, I think you've recommended. I haven't watched it yet though.
It's good. It's good. But there's a quote in the making of the Sesame Street documentary Street Gang that says what television would do if it loved
people instead of trying to sell to them.
I like that.
And like a parent or a loving partner or a best friend, I don't, unless it's like an intervention, typically tell my best friend like what they should do with their time, whether they should exercise, what they should eat. But if I spontaneously put it into a silly little song to remind them that they got to, get that cookie addiction, their binge eating cookie addiction under control, and that as Cookie Monster will remind us in this,
Yes, a cookie is a sometime food.
Oh, a cookie is a sometimes food.
So the well-meaning, well-intentioned, learning and loving musical floodgates started to open up in Sesame Street.
Sunny days.
Did you know that Henson, along with Joan Gans Cooney and Lloyd Morissette, developed and created the children's educational series Sesame Street? Now, with at last count 53 seasons and well over 4,600 plus episodes, with versions of the show in over 140 countries, there's very few kids in any country on Earth who couldn't tell you how to get to Sesame Street. The show's first musical director, Joe Raposo, wrote the theme song, which has been called a siren song for preschoolers, along with Bein' Green, a Kermit the Frog song that has been recorded by Van Morrison, Ray Charles, and the chairman of the board himself, old Blue Eyes Frank Sinatra.
It's not that easy being green.
He's also written such famous songs as Sing, C is for Cookie, the Alligator Song, and by some counts, anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 more original compositions for the show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Look, like every other normal human child, I equated bath time was being the most safe. Do you remember like a bath time routine from when you were a little kid, or a specific thing, or did your parents? Was there a song involved in bath time?
I'm sure. I'm sure there was a song. I know there was Johnson baby shampoo. I can smell it and unfortunately taste it.
Sure.
Because I have tasted.
Because you poured it into your mouth and ate
Yes. I can picture the clear bottle with the yellow top.
Sure.
God, I can smell it too. This is crazy. I haven't thought about this.
You're having a little sense memory. We're doing a little regression right now.
Like,
an early regression.
All right, everybody leave the room. But I remember that. I remember putting the bubbles on my head. I think just because it was like the song about bath time was like Rubber Ducky.
Sure.
I think it's just in my head. Like they, I mean, you talk about the freaking dominating the market. Like,
oh yeah,
that's one of the best things. That should, if Johnson & Johnson didn't pay for the production of Rubber Ducky, they owe a huge debt to the Sesame Street gang for that.
100%. So, as my buddy just alluded to, and somewhat spoiled, it is the most ubiquitous. It is the most obvious. For me, when I was like, taking a bath, my most safe, my most free, my little wiener able to just pee without soiling my diaper and indiscriminately.
I still enjoy that.
Yeah, me too.
During bath time.
And just like when I'm finally free of my diaper in the regular day. Oh my
dude.
God.
When I get home after a long day at the plant and I take my diaper off, dude, I am me at my most me. My boss is riding my ass. I got bills are past due, and I just, when that diaper comes off, it doesn't matter anymore.
As one might when they're their most comfortable and in their element. For me, by in my element, I mean, of course, as I said, in my own urine and bubble bath liquid mixture, I would sing a song. For me, it was Splish Splash. Splish Splash, I was taking a bath. Until, of course, what John just alluded to, Jim Henson's record single of his iconic bath time classic was introduced to me, Rubber Ducky.
Oh, Rubber Ducky, you're the one. You make bath time lots of fun.
Written by Jeff Ross, not the king of celebrity roasts. Jeff Ross, not that one, John. Different.
I was about to say, wow.
Different Jeff. Yeah. That dude had range.
Yeah, dude.
Different Jeff Ross. In 1970, Ross wrote the song and squeezed the squeaky toy duck. Same duck, by the way. Every recording of Rubber Ducky, the exact same rubber duck, because it had a very unique squeak. And as Jim Henson, as Ernie, sang on an episode of Sesame Street early on, it was about this simple, joyful little time that everybody could connect with. And that silly little children's song, perfect encapsulation, I apologize if I say this too many times, of everything that Jim Henson made. It was a silly little children's song that was so infectious, so popular, that it shot to number 16 on the Billboard music charts that year. Think about that. Like if you recorded like a Baby Shark of its day, so just like the most simplistic kid song or whatever, and then you looked up and at the end of the year it was like, hey, it's number 8 on the Billboard
You're like, look
100.
at me. I'm just playing around.
Yeah. And it did the like around the world, including a Spanish cover that we've played on this very show called El Petito. El Petito. And then covers by everyone from Jason Derulo to Sia to the singing group The Irish Rovers. This very weird cover from the flamboyant, self-appointed father of rock and roll, Little Richard.
Rubber Ducky, you're the one. You make bath time lots of fun.
Little Richard, interesting cat. Like anytime that I just hear him speak or see him at like award shows or whatever, like he's very, very funny to me. Like just as a natural human, just watching him talk.
Like his like energy
Yeah.
And it's so like he's so talented, but he's also like so combative.
Oh yeah, so
You
combative
didn't
and
invent rock
so
and roll, baby.
intense. Yeah. So intense so that like you think at any point like he's gonna it's gonna be a slap fight that you did not see coming, just out of nowhere. Just like his eyes will get large, and Richard, little Richard, will slap you into like off your chair or whatever.
Yeah, like it's got to be in his crew is got to be chaotic. At any time, you'll get a slap, and it will smell of the finest perfumes.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and his makeup will be they're nothing out of place, and then you'll just get slapped.
Shut up.
Shut up!
Shut up.
Shut up.
Shut up!
So eventually, this ubiquitous song even led to, in a meta form, a plea from the world at large, or even from within that Sesame Street Muppet world, that they would record in a song asking Ernie, and I guess Jim Henson, to put down the ducky.
Put down the ducky, put down the ducky, put down the ducky.
This song was one of the classic 80s, 90s, like We Are the World, or any of those songs where it was just like, or Ghostbusters, where they'd have like clips of just one celebrity, like Chevy Chase, and then Diana Ross and whatever, just saying that one line. In that case, like I Ain't Afraid of No Ghost or Ghostbusters. And in this case, just a procession of people pleading with Ernie to put down the ducky. Some of the voices in this included John Candy, Paul, I Will Crush My Children, Thanos Simon, Barbara Walters, Pee-wee Herman, Keith Hernandez, the 1986 New York Giants, not all of them, but a lot of them, Lady Smith Black Mambazo.
Yay.
It ran the gamut. News people, celebrities, whatever. It's a pretty crazy clip. Put Down the Ducky became it became a weird novelty song, but it was basically about becoming a big boy or girl. Try doing the thing you most want to try doing. In this case, in the context of the show, it was that Ernie wanted to play the the saxophone and the puppet owl. Hoot? No, whatever. Anyway, like an old jazzy puppet owl. You guys remember that guy? He was imploring Ernie that just logistically, if you want to hold this saxophone and press all the keys, you're going to have to put down your security blanket rubber ducky. Classic, you gotta you gotta get rid of your blankie if you want to get a girlfriend or whatever. The two can't coexist.
Get rid of the blankie if you want to have the hanky panky.
No, very nice. Very nice. You could write that right now for like After Dark Sesame Street.
Sesame Street at me.
Yep.
At me.
Yeah. But yeah, to try doing the things you most want to do. Don't ever lose that childlike nature. Don't stop playing. Don't stop creating or asking weird, silly questions. That's built into the Jim Henson ethos. Asking silly, weird questions that only children would ask, like as children have asked in their research when Sesame Street did some like, what kind of wacky questions would children ask? Children ask questions like these. Why do I have two eyes if I only see one thing? Good question.
Very good question. Solid.
Why don't crabs have eyebrows? Very good question. Interesting. I don't know. Why do spiders run away when I fart? One kid asked. I like that kid.
Asking the real questions.
Yeah. And though one of the kids didn't ask it, this is a fundamental one. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? So, from the opening to the 1979 Muppet movie Rainbow Connection, Rainbow Connection was written by Paul Williams, a composer, a singer, a songwriter, an actor. He had been on the Muppet Show several times.
Well, Paul, listen, Paul. I just want to say what a real thrill it is to have you on the show.
That's very kind of you, Kermit. Thank you.
He was pretty well known for, he wrote Evergreen for Barbra Streisand's Star is Born. He wrote Old Fashioned Love Song for, I think, Three Dog Night. He wrote and performed his own stuff. He was in the movie Cannonball Run. He's a very small gentleman, but a very like big open-hearted dude. And Jim Henson was like, you have this pure childlike spirit. Would you write some songs for my big movie? And Paul Williams said, yeah, I'd be honored. So composer, singer, songwriter, actor, tiny but very pure spirit person, Paul Williams actually wrote it with his partner, piano player, composer Kenneth Asher. The song was sung and performed by Jim Henson as Kermit the Frog, obviously, asking those childlike, spiritual, metaphysical questions that are laced throughout the song. We've done the song on the show. And that's, for Williams, the crux of it, probably the secret to its success and its universal appeal.
I think that in that line is the essence of what is my philosophy, and I hope it was accurate for Kermit, is that there is just immense power in faith, that there's more beauty in the questions than there are in the answers. Someday we'll find it. So, who said that?
That every wish would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star. Somebody thought of that and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far.
What it's done so far says that if you have a creative thought and you have somebody to believe in what you're doing and you have the element of faith involved, then we can do anything. It also says something about the process of writing songs.
Paul Williams had come to work with Jim Henson previously on the cult favorite Muppet musical special Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Hi all, this is Kermit the Frog, and I'm here to tell you the story about Emmett Otter's... that's Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Which was, John, do you remember this special? Do you know about it?
We were, this past Christmas, I was talking to my sister, and we were talking about different Christmas movies to watch, and she recommended that, and I was like, I haven't thought about that in forever.
Yeah, it's basically like a Jim Henson experiment whereby before he was making a big movie, he wanted to test out almost making a musical on a smaller scale with a bunch of like woodland critter otters and other kind of like backwoods woodland critters that you'd find in like the Appalachians or West Virginia or Kentucky. And they're all just like sitting around and like, playing found instruments. And they're like, it's like if Levon Helm and Robbie Robertson and the band were all like chipmunks and woodland critters or whatever, like what kind of like, spirituals would they make? And, if their only instruments were like a wash tub and a washing board and a jug.
Love it.
Yeah. So like so many things that Jim Henson did creatively, it was just this experiment to prove out and test these things that they use on bigger scale projects. But as with all this stuff, and as on a micro meta level, these woodland critters just playing these found household items, a jug, as I said, a washboard, whatever, to make their art. That was, making their art just for the shit of it too, in the middle of nowhere. That was always what it was about. It always led with music. So then that same pure, playful, joyful spirit comes flooding out of the voice of Kermit as he sings. In fact, according to Williams, there's a story where when it came time to record Rainbow Connection, the song that he had written for the Muppet movie, that was the big number. When it came time to go into the booth and record the song, Jim Henson was like sitting there and singing as Kermit.
I went into the studio with Jim, and Jim started to sing it, and it wasn't working. And it was like there was something that was just a little off. And I said to Jim, why don't you get Kermit? And he said, okay. And he went and he got Kermit. We put up a little thing so he could put Kermit up. And Kermit
sang it beautifully. Yeah.
Did you know in the first season of Saturday Night Live in 1975, Jim Henson had a recurring adult puppetry segment called Land of Gorge?
Come with us now, from the bubbling carpets to the sulphurous wasteland, from the rotting forest to the stagnant mudflats, to the land of Gorge.
It was like a proto-version of the pre-tape segments from Please Don't Destroy, The Lonely Island, or even TV Funhouse. These featured short sketches where members of a royal family from a faraway, swampy, volcano-y land called Gorge discussed and engaged in adult themes like sex, death, and drugs. But a lot of the cast members and the majority of the writers didn't like the fit of the Muppets on the show. Writers would draw straws to decide who would get stuck with writing that week's Land of Gorge segment. Staff writer Michael O'Donohue famously called them mucking fuppets and little hairy face cloths, and at times outright refused to write for them, notably saying, I don't write for felt. Unsurprisingly, maybe the only segment that was remotely well received was a musical duet with a puppet named Scred and Lily Tomlin, singing a cover of Sonny and Cher's I Got You, Babe.
Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
You know that bit in, trust me, I'll get somewhere with this, in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle? Have you seen Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle?
I have. I watch it daily.
So it's the bit where the two friends, Harold and Kumar, are driving down the road, and this cringe-inducing guilty pleasure song comes on that you'd otherwise, if you were, alone, not hesitate to belt out at full volume, because you know all the words to that silly song. But because you're with a true best friend and kindred spirit, they greenlight your best unapologetically silly impulses until, before you know it, you're belting out, Hold On by Wilson Phillips together.
Yeah.
By the way, before Bridesmaids, those dudes did it. Those two kooky stoners took that song and did something awesome with it. That impulse is the Muppets in microcosm. The attraction for every kid watching, the kid inside the adults watching alongside them, and every other performer participating. So I mean by that, every celebrity that would turn up on the Muppet Show, every person that was there as a singer, a performer, Sylvester Stallone or John Denver or Elton John, what they got to do in that environment was the purest form of performing and play, because it had to be this purely imagination-based thing. And participating in this big over-the-top Technicolor invitation to play and pretend, that in metaphor, that green felt best friend greenlighting your own better, brighter, sillier impulses to sing out a silly song or whatever. Within the context of the Muppet music in universe and the Muppet universe in macrocosm, just below the TV frame where you could not see what was happening beneath Ernie and Bert, was the comic partnership, the Harold and Kumar of the Muppets, the comic partnership of Jim Henson and Frank Oz. They were Bert and Ernie. They were Kermit and Piggy. They were Kermit and Fozzie. They were easily, I mean this, by the way, can you think of, when you think of comedic partnerships that jump out in your head, what are some?
Abbott and Costello.
Yes.
Laurel
and Hardy. I'll help you out. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Laurel and Hardy. Yeah.
Martin and Lewis, like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Tina Fey and Amy Poehler.
That's a good
Will
one.
Ferrell and John C. Reilly.
Very solid.
Key and Peele.
Yeah.
Key and Peele. And we could go to the UK and there's, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore and all of these other, great pairings. And I swear to God, Henson and Oz, Jim Henson and Frank Oz, were easily on that tier for the amount of humor and joy they brought. Henson and Oz found each other the way, and I mean this, I think pretty sincerely when I describe them this way. They found each other the way soulmates do. Like you and I think about soulmates often and we're like, oh, it's my romantic partner. What if sometimes it's just another creative partner that you're with, but not romantically, for this long protracted period of time, and you are just kindred spirits who found each other and bring out the best in each other, and somehow, by some inexplicable alchemy, create, by the sum of your parts, light and joy and magic. I submit to you that might be what soulmates are sometimes.
Hmm.
Frank Oz came to work with Jim Henson as a puppeteer with no particular aspiration, by the way, to be a performer at like, he had started puppetry at like 16, 17 years old, as well as Henson had when they were both young. And he came to Jim Henson as a performer at 19 years old. But as I say, wanting to be a puppeteer, never wanting to perform or speak out. And like a kindred spirit can do, well, that kindred spirit tends to see and bring to the surface things in you that you don't see in yourself. And what Henson said of Oz was ultimately Frank Oz, though he was by all accounts to all of his friends the shyest person that they knew and very quiet and very reserved, Henson said of Oz, he was probably the person most responsible for the Muppets being funny.
Really?
Yeah. And I think when you think about it, you attribute all this stuff to Jim Henson, but like he had to have partners and people to like bounce off of. And you know, at Henson's memorial, after losing his creative partner, Frank Oz singled out not what Henson had done for his life or his career most of all, and the crazy turn that it had taken from being a shy kid who wouldn't speak to the voice of Yoda and this person that's iconic as a kind of singular voice artist for, I don't know, all of us, and becoming then an actor and a performer in other films as he pops up occasionally in them and directs them, and just this huge swing that his life had taken toward being this this creator himself. But what during the Henson Memorial, after losing his partner, what Frank Oz wanted to single out was just the simple joy of making his friend laugh.
It usually happened when we were recording something or performing with the gang, and Jim would, I don't know, we'd get so punchy and silly at 2 a.m, and Jim would just start that high whine, and he couldn't speak, and the tears are rolling down, and he'd try to add to the joke, and he just couldn't do it. And it was the best thing to see, because you knew he was always busy and always working and pressure and thinking. It was such a purge and a release. It was wonderful. The best thing to see him do
that. And this experience of what it was like to do that. I think that's what took a shy young guy who wanted to hide below the spotlight and the camera frame and not speak above a low whisper to someone who's willing to sing as with his full voice and bounce off his best friend as they move on their merry way and move right along.
Moving right along, footloose and fancy free.
Getting there is half the fun, come share it with me.
So, whether it was some grand, heartfelt, sweeping cinematic song, A Rainbow Connection, or like Paul Williams described, what he found as probably as close to as I'll ever get to feeling I wrote something purely spiritual, the Gonzo song from the Muppet movie, I'm Going Back There Someday.
This looks familiar, vaguely familiar, almost unreal yet. It's too soon to feel yet, close to my soul, and yet so far away. I'm going to go back there someday. Sun rises, night falls, sometimes the sky calls. Is that a song there? And do I belong there? I've never been there, but I know the way. I'm going to go back there someday.
Which is kind of a cult favorite where Rainbow Connection might be, I don't know, the overt radio hit, the Satisfaction or whatever. That's the B-side that a lot of like cult folks are really down with. Or maybe there's something sing-along and full of the TV show's sense of play, but using it as a Trojan horse for profound sentiments, like Harry Belafonte's Turn the World Around.
We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water.
Or there's, the simple, small desperation of feeling trapped in a mundane but moving moment, like a tiny frog named Robin finding meaning and peace in being sat halfway down the stairs.
Halfway down the stairs is a stair where I sit.
Look, there are children's songs, and then there are children's songs. As we've said, and it laces all the way through this, every one of them and all of the ways in which they appeal and last and break through and become radio hits or already were radio hits, every other one that you could single out was either a cover, classic Henson thing. Here's a song that I really like. I'm going to have the Muppets do it or cover it or lip sync to it. There's the originals, your collaborators like Paul Williams and so forth, who, did their versions of them. And then there's the major artist that very often at the time comes to the Muppet Show to either perform one of their songs or one of the Muppet Show's songs. So on Sesame Street, back in the day, there was a children's song that, like many others you could single out, jumped the tracks and became a Billboard hit and sensation, covered by Barbra Streisand, covered by the Carpenters, covered by two deaf kids in the movie Nashville. If you ever saw that?
No.
Very weird. Yeah. And it showed up on the Muppet Show, sung by Cotton Club singer and American music and theater icon Lena Horne. It was just known as Sing.
Sing, sing a song, sing out loud, sing out strong.
See, the Muppets encouraged kids and adult children and childless dads like John and me, childless dads, to sing and to play and to make a weird, silly, juvenile fool of yourself. And like the driftwood board in your Airbnb's bathroom reminds you, though it might sound silly and people may laugh, to dance. To dance like no one's watching. When Jim Henson was working and conceiving of his 1986 Wizard of Oz meets Maurice Sendak film Labyrinth, he knew that there were going to be songs and musical numbers, and he initially wanted Sting. Gordon Sumner, Sting from The Police, lead singer of The Police, and sometime costumed lute player at Renaissance Fair.
I was just about to say, wait, the guy that I see at the Renaissance Festival all the time?
Yeah. Totally. And in some respects, I think that's quite literally why Jim Henson saw this character as Sting from the outset. He was like, I've seen him perform, I've seen him act, he'd been in like Dune or whatever, but he also saw him like perform and do silly comedy sketches, and he could sing. And so I get fully why. Have you ever seen Sting's appearance, by the way, on that documentary about psychedelics? That I think it's called like One Bad Trip or something like that, or A Very Bad Trip
No.
or whatever. And it's just like Sting talking about his worst psychedelic trips.
No.
It's so good.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's really good, actually. All those, basically it's a doc where, like, in a funny way, because they're all fine, like a lot of performers or like your Sarah Silvermans and your people who've like, done psychedelics but come back to tell the tale.
Yeah.
They, and look, we don't need to debate it or whatever. Like, I don't know if there's a more certain thing in my mind, though nowhere in my research did it show it. I don't have to get the train back on the tracks, but if there was a better certainty in my mind than that Jim Henson has done psychedelics in his life.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. Like, for certain. I don't think that's like speaking out of turn. But anyway, when Jim Henson was conceiving of this character for his film, he wanted Sting. But in the end, to play the spookily seductive Goblin King, Jareth, in the movie Labyrinth, he got David Bowie. David Bowie with hair so teased you'd think it wore its underwear outside its pants to school. And tights.
That was good. That was good.
Tights so revealing.
That was really good.
Tights so revealingly, obnoxiously, anatomically tight. It was like the most bracing thing to look at in a scene full of foam goblins. Quick aside. Oh, here. Quick aside to the aside I just made.
Mm-hmm.
Quick aside. Several years ago, I was in a dingy bar, like a dive bar in LA. I was meeting a friend for a beer, end of the day. And in walks 20 to 30 people, all dressed as Jareth. Go Google him. Go give it a Googs.
Oh, my God.
All dressed as Jareth, the Goblin King David Bowie character from the film Labyrinth. A sea of tight leather pants or black tights and teased out flock of seagulls, blonde wigs, and so many cod pieces and socks stuffed into tights. I just remember them walking in and we all stopped, which I guess is what you would do. And they played from a boombox.
And baby said, dance, magic, dance, dance, magic, dance.
The song, Dance, Magic, Dance. And they drank a single round of drinks, and then they moved along to what I assume would be the next very bewildered bar patrons as they did this Jareth bar crawl. 30 of them.
Yeah, well, that would be so jarring. But I kind of, I hope that they just then, without saying a word to each other, left and went back to their domiciles. There's just like this weird, like
the one meetup as opposed to the bar crawl.
Yeah,
I like that,
and
actually.
like everybody's
It's
left.
a flash mob, and then the flash mob disperses immediately.
Yeah, everybody's left just in awe of what just happened, and they're like, "Yeah, deal with it. We're here."
So yeah, and you know, like a roving pack of Jareths or not, that song is a jam. Years before the Grimm's fairy tale from Monty Python's Silliness of Labyrinth, though, Jim Henson used mystical melody to comfort and convey unity in what was effectively this choral chanting, like a giant resonant ohm. In a film he made before Labyrinth. Henson, in what was a surprisingly joke and dialogue light experimental film called The Dark Crystal, used music and melody to convey something simple and elemental about character. Basically, that the good guys, the light keepers in the world, you could tell, not just by the fact that they look like monastic turtles meet shaggy dogs in puppetry, but by the fact that they made music. That the good guys, the light keepers, sang or chanted or whatever in harmony and in unison. And the bad guys, you could tell, not just because they look like sinister skeletal murder vultures, but that they spoke in these atonal, amelodic, screeching voices, basically the antithesis of music and the antithesis of harmony. Good characters in Dark Crystal loved music, made music, responded to music, played the flute, or whatever. Good characters in the Dark Crystal like to get down. But I mean, how many evil people, by the way, do you know who play the flute anyway? Isn't that like a pretty tell? Don't answer that. I don't know. Maybe.
Little ham and eggs coming at you. Hold on, people. Hope you got your griddles.
Do you know any evil people who play the flute?
Well, that dude in Fleetwood, or not Fleetwood Mac, Jethro Tull. He only looks like he has one leg. He looks evil. I mean, he stands on one leg, but I know he has two. But it looks like he has one. That looks pretty evil.
Clearly a devil indicator.
Yep.
Every one of the songs we mentioned that jumped out for Jim Henson or Muppets adjacent projects, there will, and that's kind of the joy of doing this project, there will be infectious or moving favorites that we didn't put our fingers on. John Denver's musical collaborations with the Muppets came to define his career, like almost as much as like the song Country Roads or Sunshine on My Shoulders or Leaving on a Jet Plane, except that one was pretty prophetic and weird. So that's burned in people's brains. But John Denver was a guest on The Muppet Show, made multiple appearances with the Muppets, 2 Muppet TV specials, 2 Muppet music albums from the TV specials. And for some folks, his treatment of a little backwoods spiritual called When the River Meets the Sea is like a Christmas carol by Levon Helm and the band, but, made of felt.
When the river meets the sea.
It was another song Paul Williams wrote for Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, meant for a fuzzy frontier wife otter to sing to her otter son to offer comfort for the fact that his father, her husband and partner, is gone. But fake and real children alike found such beauty and connection in it that it kind of couldn't possibly stay in this small experimental TV special. It had to jump into a different realm. Some deep-thinking foodies from the Muppets will like the Winnie the Pooh song that the pantless bear with an eating disorder used to sing when, as he said, when his brain felt fluffy, a song called Coddleston Pie.
Pardon, but Pooh would instead sing this song, which he made up for singing when his brain felt fluffy. It's like this. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. A fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston.
And it was one of Jim Henson's favorite songs. It was sung by Frank Oz to Jim Henson at his memorial service, and it was covered by Rolf the Dog on Sesame Street.
Hey.
But music made its way into the echoing through the caves, cave-dwelling people of the big dreaming, cave-dwelling Fraggles down in Fraggle Rock. Down in Fraggle Rock. Doing a little ditty about going doodly doodly and deliberately finding a friend with which to be a Wemblin fool.
So now it's doodly 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 song.
Another iconic Henson classic, another song sung at his memorial as it happens. Some people prefer staying above ground and checking in to the Happiness Hotel in the Muppets Take Manhattan.
Somebody's checking in.
Or when Jazz and Soul and Garfield Christmas special singer Lou Rawls was asked by Kermit, the secret to singing jazz, he said, Lou Rawls' impression here, all you got to do is lay back and lay down some golden tones with some soul and style. At which point he proceeded to lay down a groovy rendition of the song Groovy People.
Hey, and I like groovy people. I like to be around the groovy people, yeah.
Backed by Muppet backup singers, the Sleaze Brothers, a bunch of leisure suit wearing hip cats with half-closed eyes designed to mimic jazz bows high on their jazz sixties. By the way, how many, speaking of like psychedelics and so forth, how many guesses would you have in a quick, kind of mental Rolodex at like how many characters are thought or said to be designed to convey that they are high? Like, think about the Muppet Band.
Yeah.
Think about, I just said there are 4 Sleaze Brothers, so that's 4 right there.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's hard to be that, whatever. But just at a guess, based on like designing their eyes and designing their thing, and like, look, I'm not saying all the members of the band are high or out of their heads at every moment, but like, I think that's.
I think everybody. So you're talking about Dr. Teeth and Electric Mayhem.
Yeah, Dr. Teeth and
the Electric Mayhem.
The kind of Joni Mitchell guitar player and the sax player and just all the, how many would you say?
So I say everybody except for Animal who was on Animals on Coke, but I think everybody else is
or amphetamine
high,
or meth.
yeah, meth, Coke, because everybody else is relaxed eyes, and Animo is coked out of his mind.
Yeah. I would say that by some people's counts, and what's funny is the more you do Muppet like deep dives on the internet, the more you'll find that there's a lot of people who have devoted like, a lot of time to looking at, to creating monuments to cataloging, to memorializing and valorizing and just waxing rhapsodic about the Muppets and the Muppet Show and all of that. There are some counts. There was one count, and I'm not going to do the itemized thing that, like, across all the various Muppet endeavors, there was some count that said it was 62 characters are high or actively high. And I was like, I'm sure that's not an official word out of the Muppet Workshop, but like,
when the random drug testing comes back, it's like, all right,
yeah, exactly.
Our study shows over the last year off of random drug tests when they were coming in and out of the studio that 62 were high. I would agree with that. The other two pissed clean. They probably got it from Kermit. They probably bought it off of Kermit.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Some folks, by the way, like the occasional absurdity of skipping singing with people or discernible voices at all, but instead having an all chicken cover of the song Babyface, as the Muppet Show did. All chickens singing the song Babyface. Or maybe a bunch of woodland possums singing Buffalo Springfield's For What It's Worth as a warning to their fellow little critters and little children about a hunter, a man with a gun over there.
What's that sound? Everybody look what's going round.
Elton John, speaking of John Denver, Elton John, like, not by any means, do we define his career, which is, one of the biggest in music history, by his collaborations with the Muppets. But he basically was a Muppet in the way he dressed and performed and was pitched perfectly at that feather and felt Technicolor vibe. And, his Crocodile Rock on the Muppet Show, his subbing in of Miss Piggy perfectly for his partner in his uplifting love song, Don't Go Breaking My Heart with Kiki D. And as Piggy put it in the song, eat your heart out.
Eat your heart out, Kiki!
Or, for that matter, a duet where Jim Henson's Rolf, the piano-playing dog, serenades and sympathizes with himself and Kermit. So Jim Henson as Rolf, singing to Jim Henson as Kermit, both consoling each other as they were going through a discussion of whether women and relationships are worth the hassle.
Wow.
Nice and simple. Stay away from women. That's my motto. But I can't. Neither can I. That's my trouble.
Muppets After Dark.
Did you know we have this tendency to desexualize our surrogate father figures, like our leaders? Like, what? The president had sexual relations with that woman? He's not supposed to be doing that. And certainly not during office hours, but maybe not at all. And this was this recurring thread that was throughout the Jim Henson biography that we read that dealt with this very respectfully and tastefully in to the way that Jim Henson seemed to deal with this in his way. Basically, that whilst Jim Henson was away in the UK and London and in far-flung places, making puppet things that would capture and expand our imaginations, while he was succeeding and feeling himself to some probably not small extent, and while he was finding all of his dreams coming true, and he could buy nice sports cars and have a nice house in London and wear the nicest, newest London fashions, that Jim Henson's wife was home in New York raising the kids, and that they had been childhood sweethearts who had worked and created first puppets and then a family together since they were 16 or 17 years old and Jim Henson needed to sow some oats. So we're going to try similarly to deal with this as consciously and tastefully as the biography did. So maybe take the kids out of the room for this section. I'll give you a couple of seconds. All right, are they gone? Jim Henson was getting it in. Jim Henson was a hound. He was out on them streets, and my man was like, he was crushing.
Yeah,
he was getting it in. Not a lot of people know that.
Hey, prostitute, your money is on the table.
Hey, here's a towel. Clean yourself up and do me a favor. Don't let the door hit you in your big fat ass on the way out.
He kept it real under wraps. I mean, I don't mean it like his ding dong. I mean like all of this stuff, because he didn't want not just his wife, who did know apparently, but she kind of understood that they were living apart and kind of growing apart. But he also, out of respect for his wife and for his kids, never wanted anybody to know. But apparently it was like a very well-kept secret, because like just they'd see Jim Henson in his convertible with some, new chick that like was so into, the Henson vibe. And he'd be like, I'm gonna play you like I'm gonna put my hand in you like a brand new Muppet.
Who knew?
Muppets
I had no
After
idea.
Dark.
You can't live with them, you can't live without them. There's something irresistible-ish about them.
Real adult themes going on here, because at the time, Jim Henson himself was going through his own, separation with, as I said, what was his longest time collaborator on all these puppet things, his wife Jane. And he was debating with himself, as Kermit, as Rolf, singing to each other, whether women and relationships are worth it in I Hope Something Better Comes Along. Which, again, literally one guy is a frog and a dog talking and singing to himself. Just go, fascinating stuff.
Did I always thought like this could totally be one of the, what's that called, the where you
Mandela?
Yes, I thought Rolf was in Dr. Teeth in the Electric.
No,
Mayhem.
I think Dr. Teeth himself played keys.
Yes.
So Rolf wasn't like in the larger band and in the orchestra band downstairs, but just in terms of like the vaudeville act that the Muppet Show was, Rolf was off to the side to play like piano to get people to come on. But when Dr. Teeth as a band played, their vibe was like Dr. Teeth, who was Dr. John, sort of, but also just like in terms of like a musical model, like Such a Night, that Dr.
Yes.
John. I think, Dr. Teeth himself played keys, and not that you can't have an organ player and a piano player or whatever, but no, like I think mostly Rolf was on his own thing. I think it is what you just described.
I was totally conflating that, because then I was like, wait a second, but Dr. Teeth played keys, like that was his thing, and so it makes sense. I wonder if they ever jammed.
I am sure, and they played on like, when they did their big Broken Social Scene, kind of like their huge super band kind of mashups where they played with all of these different musicians and elements. For sure, he jammed in with them from time
I
to
hope
time.
so. Or
100%.
it was a fierce rivalry.
Or that. Look, I'm sure. So we've just been dropping nuggets in here and basically deviating from some typical format to bring you a few snippets of how many people there will be who are saying like, yeah, you played this, this Muppet song or that Muppet song, but, I honestly welcome the people who are like, well, why didn't you do Kermit's cover of the 1939 Marx Brothers song, Lydia the Tattooed Lady?
Oh, Lydia, that encyclopedia. Oh, Lydia, the queen of tattoo. On her back is the Battle of Waterloo. Beside it, the wreck of the Hesperus too. And proudly above waves the red, white, and blue. You can learn a lot from Lydia. La da da.
Or some forgotten Fraggle Rock number like Let Me Be Your Song.
I say 1, 2, play me do. Let me sound as sweet as you. Play me wide, play me long. Let me be your song.
Or you can't just seem to, can't you just play the opening theme to the spin-off cartoon Muppet Babies? Spinning in my brain right now. Do you remember Muppet Babies?
Oh man, that their lady with the socks that was like their babysitter.
Yeah.
She was their babysitter, right? She wasn't their mom.
Yeah.
Or did she adopt them?
No, I think she was just the nanny, so it was like she had to have adopted them. Again, just I'm no Muppet doctor, but just biologically, I feel like they were all adopted, but they didn't know it maybe yet.
Yeah,
but
they're like, oh, we're all
she hadn't
different.
broken the news to them.
We're all different
She
species.
had to sit them down. In a very special episode, she sat each of them down and just crushed their spirits by going like, "You're adopted, and we will never find your parents."
See, this is my real children, and this is you. You notice anything different? They have socks like I do. They're way taller. I loved that show so much. I loved Muppet Babies.
It was good.
Yeah.
But again, that's Muppet music in that or the opening to Fraggle Rock theme or the opening to the Muppet Show very iconically, all of those, that's woven in there too, that even the song intros, whether it was within an episode that they were doing a musical, because they often were, because Rolf was in there banging those keys on the baby piano. All of those intro musics were so iconic and so classic, and they linger in all these ways because of as testament to their quality. By some estimates, it's hard or near impossible to get a firm number, just like the number of Muppets who are high. There are unofficial numbers, but across all the varied and various shows, films, alternative puppety projects that Jim Henson touched while he was alive, there were anywhere from, do you want to take a guess? Is it worth taking a guess? Do you want to take a guess as to how many Muppet songs, anything that touched, as I said, it could have been in a cartoon, it could have been in the Muppet Show, it could have been in a Muppet movie, it could have been in another Muppet project. Overall, for all the Muppet music that exists under that umbrella, anything that, was touched, Sesame Street, all of it, how many Muppet songs are there, do you think?
Oh my God. So I can't even, because there's so
folding in originals, covers, collaborations, out there experiments, just
because it was so woven in.
I won't leave you hanging. Do you want me to just jump?
100?
Here it is. What?
100?
No, it is somewhere estimated between 1,200 and 1,500 songs.
So
yeah,
I just missed it.
You just missed it. You prices righted it on the bottom end or whatever, but yeah. I think that we could, just drop in constantly more and more. It's kind of the point of this exercise, though, to underscore, though we will never get to all of them, and there was no point in doing them chronologically, that this is how pivotal, foundational music was to the entire Jim Henson and Muppet Workshop project. He was speaking to kids and to the kid in all of us, so it makes sense to speak to them in a language they can fully understand and wrap their arms around, and that is music. Silly, silly music.
Did you know that The Muppet Show ran for 5 seasons and a total of 120 episodes between 1976 and the year of our Lord that I was born, 1981? Set up as a variety show in the old vaudevillian style with comedy sketches and musical numbers, it asks musicians and non-musical performers alike to stretch themselves in performing some sort of song or dance number. The Muppets themselves would often sing duets or perform in big ensemble choral musical numbers. Kermit was a tenor baritone in vocal range. Miss Piggy was a contralto. Fozzie was a bass baritone. And Gonzo, as you guessed, was a flinty sort of tenor countertenor. The show also had the house band Dr. Teeth and Electric Mayhem. Though they started out with that name, they claimed they had no lead singer and functioned as a, quote, rocktocracy. They're made up of Dr. Gerald Teeth, a keyboard player and singer, Sergeant Floyd Pepper on the bass and vocals, Janice, lead guitar and vocals. Both Floyd and Janice played bass and lead guitar left-handed, by the way. Floyd playing mostly a Fender bass and Janice typically playing a Cherry Sunburst Les Paul. Sweet guitar. And then there was the brass section made up of Lips on trumpet and Zoot on saxophone, which you might know him for playing the same off-key note to finish the name song. And finally, the backbeat of the rhythm section, if not the band itself, well-known wild man Animal on the drums.
In fact, around 14, 15 years ago, the Muppets, post Jim Henson, wanted to re-announce themselves to the world, and of course they did it, in chorus, through song, in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
And honestly, short of Freddie Mercury coming back from the grave, maybe no better voice than the voice of Animal, out of his mind on meth, though he was, to plaintively cry out for his mama.
Mama. Mama? Yeah. Mama.
When they, in Jim Henson's absence, wanted to resurrect the Muppets, though, for a movie in 2011, they wisely reached out to Brett McKenzie, who was the kind of co-writer, co-singer, not kind of, he was exactly the co-writer and co-singer for the Flight of the Conchords, the famous New Zealand Kiwi musical comedy duo. And to give it the musical bones and song skeleton that any new Muppet project, in this case a Jason Segel Muppet film called The Muppet Movie, was going to need to convey what Jim Henson was most often trying to convey. That, well, like he led with in the film,
Life's a happy song, and there's someone by my side to sing along.
When there's someone by your side to sing along, at least. And now, no shots at New Coke, Uncanny Valley Kermit voice actor and Jim Henson approximator. That's probably not the most flattering way to describe somebody's job description. What's your job here? I'm a Jim Henson approximator.
Yeah, I'm kind of holding the seat. I'll never be him. Nobody knows my name. Yeah. So, did you know that vocals from the actual characters or the performers singing themselves, like Henson and Oz principally, and then the other performers, stopped at some point, and the non-singers made the songs accessible to kids. That was kind of the charm back then. It was hearing these non-perfectly trained vocalists singing these songs made it, like we said, accessible, easy to sing along with, and very approachable. And that ceased at some point, and it became the equivalent of kind of like Disney films, where you would have these very theater kids instantly become the voice of the characters with these amazing voices, and that was a big shift in the history and the timeline of all these musical pieces.
Yeah. So his name is Steve Whitmore, and your mileage may vary on the Steve Whitmores. There was a time when Henson's own son, Brian, who kind of took over the Henson workshop and did a lot of cool stuff, made Farscape. Shout out Farscape. But there have been all these different Kermit voices, and your mileage may vary on the new era Muppets for that very reason. I know I have a real kind of issue with and disconnection with new Kermit, because new Kermit, I kind of know his voice and him. It doesn't sound like, it doesn't have the soul of Jim Henson. so it kind of loses me. Disney's Muppets, as they would come to be in the new era, that Henson's puppeteering soulmate and comedic partner Frank Oz is accused of being entirely too unambitious, too safe, and earmuffs Disney defenders, too crassly in it for the money to crank out a well-loved IP. It's hard to argue with that.
I mean, in this day and age, it never in a million years would they get away or even attempt the stuff that they did back then. I mean, the second I saw it when I was just looking up some stuff about Dr. Teeth, it said they premiered on the second pilot of the Muppet Show, and the show was called Sex and Violence. And it's like absolutely not in this.
Yeah. But everything about Jim Henson was an experimental filmmaker. So like, though out of chronology, I like was talking about like Dark Crystal, which was like a wild swing, and it's classic, like, you know, when you're kind of on top of the world and you have this, like, you took this bet on yourself that was this self-financed by a different guy and made in the UK Muppet show that, you know, didn't find its home at Saturday Night Live, and like all the incarnations that it took. But all the way through, Jim Henson was like making short films or experimental short films, or experimenting with very weird different puppetry, or making a series I loved called The Storyteller about like Grimm's fairy tales and the really more grown-up puppetry fairy tales in like little serialized stories. That he was an experimenter. And the new era of Muppets, because the same way it lacks Kermit's voice, it lacks Kermit's soul and Jim Henson's soul. And Jim Henson's soul wanted to like cared about the utmost quality in everything he did, and wanted to take weird, wild swings that, as I said, like not all of them connected and not all of them were hits, but like it's built into who he was. So anyway, on the 2011 Muppet movie that Fly the Conchords' Brett McKenzie was working on, the spirit of Henson occasionally does, though, peek through, because when McKenzie, for example, leaning into the acknowledged, not quite rightness of Kermit without Henson, as I was saying, Kermit's voice without Henson, he made one of my personal favorite recent bits of Muppet music, leaning into the fact that it's an Eastern European or Russian imposter frog voice, as Constantine serenading Miss Piggy with the sweetly silly song, I'll Get You What You Want, from the Muppets Plus One.
You want a unicorn, I'll give it to you. You want a puppet dog, I'll give it to you. You want an ice cream cone, I'll give it to you. You want a mortgage,
I'll give it to you. Look, like we pointed out throughout, in the humble beginnings of being a teen playing around with puppets on 5-minute puppet program called Sam and Friends, young Jim Morey Henson hung it all heavily on music. Even then, at every turn, as Jim Henson's more ambitious nature and his ambitious projects actually became realized, from Sesame Street, and the Sesame Street theme song that millions of children have grown up on.
Tell me how to get to Sesame Street.
As intro to the Muppet Show, and the special bits in between. I'm pretty sure there's a clip of James Taylor singing with, speaking of people being high and puppets, James Taylor, famous singer-songwriter, Fire and Rain, James Taylor, he is not a puppet to best of my knowledge, but there's the clip that we just heard a piece of, and I'm pretty sure James Taylor may have been coked out of his gourd on that one, because he had to meet these kids' wild energy in this clip.
Jenny, come home, Jenny, come home, Jenny, come.
And like somehow there's this giant bird in the background who I'm sure is offering him booger sugar, and James Taylor, like, what's a guy to do? But like just that little clip of James Taylor we just heard a piece of. There's too many songs. There's too many bits. 1,200, 1,500, I know not. I look forward to when our listeners send in the angry voicemail, the angry email, the angry whatever, to say, I can't believe you didn't play this one. Because that's just kind of built into this. Like, there's too many songs braided into every thread of what Jim Henson made for the purposes of make-believe. But never knowing if someone was going to pull the plug before the big man upstairs ultimately pulled the plug and took him home, Jim Henson poured every big, grandiose idea into each of his projects that he managed to get made. And he snuck his own humane, uplifting, profound mission statement into some very silly songs, lyrics, that wormed their way into your head and your heart. The Muppet Movie, the first time Jim Henson got to make his big-time feature-length film, was maybe the ultimate example of exactly that. We've already covered the Rainbow Connection, and I'm going back there someday, and I'm moving right along, and the Moving Right Along song. But I always personally think of the big musical moment at the end of the Muppet Movie. Do you know the bit that I'm talking about, John? Have you seen this in a while?
It's been a while. I know it.
I'll describe it. So, when all the Muppets have been singing this ending song, because now they're finally all together, because that's kind of the purpose of the Muppet Movie. It's he goes on this road trip where he's a single frog singing a song on a log by himself with his banjo, disconnected from everybody, but hoping that like he will have this community and these people. And then he goes on this road trip and he collects, Kermit does, all of these disparate, weird, kindred spirits. Fozzie Bear and Gonzo and Dr. Teeth and his whole crew, and ultimately Piggy, and just all of them, all the way along. And at the end, when all of the Muppets finally are singing together in front of a backdrop that shows landmarks from throughout the film in like a sound stage, they're all singing together an encore, a reprise of Rainbow Connection over a soundstage recreation of all of these set pieces. Kind of like a, hey, remember when we met Dr. Teeth and his band of burnouts? And like you see this, abandoned church or their psychedelic converted hippie school bus that they drive around in or whatever. So they're in front of this backdrop, and then they all together in unison in this high note crescendo in singing the song in chorus together. And when you know it, but Gonzo hits a part of the set and the whole thing comes tumbling down, and then there's sparks and there's pyrotechnics from that weirdo dude who always pushes the plunger, who's like a he's like a pyromaniac, but also does the pyro for the Muppet Show. And in doing the song, they literally bring the house down. The set collapses, but also the soundstage roof caves in, and the sun begins to pour in on Kermit and Piggy and Fozzie and Gonzo and Rolf and all of them. And the music gently comes in again with it. And in it, I think, a beautiful little grace note for the film and for Jim Henson to give you a little bit more of his life philosophy. That life is like a movie. Make your own ending. Keep believing. Keep
pretending. We've done just what we've set out to do. Thanks to the lovers, the dreamers, and
So if you dug or got anything out of or found funny the show you just heard, John and I put in a lot of time and effort and care in making it. And all we'd ask is that if you got a laugh or found it interesting or liked a certain part, that if there's anybody out there in the world, multiple people that you think might dig it and get a laugh and find it interesting, then share it with them. And, maybe give us a rating and review while you're at it. We'd love that.